Hi friends, I'm Chelsea Grayson coming to you once again from the Office of the CEO. This is my show where I can help you be more successful in your current career, and I can also help you successfully transition to a new career. So today I wanted to talk to you about the concept of self-awareness as an employee of your organization, the importance of doing regular self-assessments. And I don't mean the sort of self-assessments that are assigned to you in advance of your performance evaluation, although those are extremely important and this will certainly facilitate in that process. I mean the kind of self-assessment that you do just for your eyes only. These can be super helpful in terms of giving yourself a nice gut check, just to show yourself the chasm between, I really want this promotion, I'm really going to go for this raise. Then you do the self-assessment and realize I might have some shortcomings here. There might be a place where I could improve myself. I might not get that promotion as easily as I think I should, just to manage your own expectations so that when you walk into the room and maybe you aren't given the promotion, you aren't given the raise, you can say, well, honestly, I did that self-assessment of myself behind the scenes and I can sort of see areas I need to improve in order to actually achieve that promotion. And please know that self-assessments are performed, whether imposed upon you by the organization or something that you just need to do for yourself, at all levels. You guys know that I mostly sit on public company boards for a living. That's my primary, that's the primary part of my career. And every year, if not twice a year, public company board directors are required to go through a self-assessment process. Generally, the results are given to the chair of the Nominating and Corporate Governance Committee, and then the results of that self-assessment are collated into a general analysis that's done by the corporation on itself in terms of what does our board look like, where are the gaps in expertise, where are the gaps in industry expertise or substantive expertise? And then that analysis goes into, do we have the right board members? Should some of these board members be exited off the board so that we can recruit additional talent that'll fill in those gaps? Or we feel like we absolutely have all the right board members, our board is assembled properly, and we're happy to put this into the materials to submit these folks for re-election at the upcoming annual shareholders meeting. So again, even at the upper echelons of corporate America, at the upper echelons of corporate infrastructure, self-assessment is something that will always be required of you and that you should always be thinking about behind the scenes. Now, the self-assessment process is actually really helpful to the extent that you do it real time, all along throughout the course of the year. Constantly be assessing and reassessing your strengths, your weaknesses. Think about successes that you've had, think about failures that you've had, think about successes that the flip side of the coin is that it cost you something, and think about why it cost you something in order to achieve that success. Think about mistakes and stumbles that you've had. Be writing it all down throughout the course of the year. Now, as you guys know, because I've discussed it in multiple previous episodes, all of the accomplishments, all of the good stuff, all of the successes are going to go into your so-called brag memo. The document that I've talked about in numerous episodes previously, and I'll brush up on in a future episode. This is the memo that's a 1 or 2 page document that you'll want to submit ahead of your performance evaluation, submit it to your personnel file and have it presented at your performance evaluation, which talks about nothing but all of your wonderful accomplishments and successes throughout the course of the year that's being reviewed. Right? And you want to keep that real time, as we've talked about, so you don't have to go back and remember everything at the end of the year when you're suddenly up for your evaluation. But by the same token, throughout the course of the year, you should be writing things down on the flip side of those coins. Again, not just the accomplishments and the strengths and the successes, but also the hiccups, the mistakes, the failures, the flaws, the things that, areas where you could stand to use some improvement. Because you might not remember that stuff at the end of the year, and then God forbid you forget about it and you fail to work on that area, you don't improve year over year, which is probably the absolute worst thing you can do for your career path. You should always be stretching and growing and improving year over year, not just for your own personal growth, but also in order to get noticed and to get that many more accomplishments to put on your brag memo. I will give you an example of how self-assessment really comes into play just from my own personal experience. So when I was a partner at Jones Day, as you guys know, I was a lawyer in a previous career, I finally made partner, and I was excited to see that after my first year of being a partner, I had generated a slightly multi-million dollar book of business, which I thought was, wow, okay, that's quite an accomplishment. I'm a first year partner. I already have a book of business that's worth more than $1 million. You know, I'm really on my way here, and they're going to be very impressed, and I'll get a bigger slice of equity. Then I really had to stand back and say, all right, Chelsea, this is great, but are there any gaps in your analysis? Are there any holes here? Is there any downside to what you've done over the course of the year? And I looked to see what that book of business cost, right? So what was I being paid? So what was the firm spending to pay me? What was the firm spending to pay my associates? So what was the firm spending to pay the paralegals that had helped me out during the course of the year in order to generate that book? You know, what about the administrative support? Were there travel expenses? You know, were there corporate gifts that I sent out? Did I actually fully collect on all of my bills, or did I allow discounts, write-offs, what have you, after the client might have come back and said, this bill is too rich? So I looked at all of the costs and expenses by which I would reduce the top line revenue that I had generated via that book. And I realized, well, all right, I'm still turning a profit here for the firm, but it's definitely not as rich as I thought it was when I was really just looking at that top line number of the book of business that I had brought in, you know, to the firm. So that was a nice gut check for me, but it helped me manage my expectations. And I walked into my performance evaluation that year, because yes, even partners get that in a manner of speaking. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to get the bump in equity that I thought I deserved when I had originally looked at the numbers, because I knew the margin was much tighter than I had anticipated before I did that self-assessment. So it is really important to do this self-assessment. So again, so you manage your own expectations and things don't come as a surprise for you. Now, I can get into incredible levels of detail in terms of the sorts of things you ought to be using to assess yourself in a future episode, but at a high level perspective, you know, first take a look at what is your job description, if there is a job description for your position. Where do you shine in terms of the things that make up that job description? Where might you fall a little short? Where are some things where you could stand to use some improvement? So that's a very easy place to start. Now take a look at your company's core values as expressed, hopefully somewhere on the website or in documents that you can find in HR. What's the mission statement and the core values of the company? Are you satisfying those? Are there places where you're falling down on some of those values? The things that the company self-describes, you know, the things that it says it's going to deliver to its customers, whoever those might be, are you good in those areas? If you had to be a comprehensive representative for your entity, are there things that you might want to brush up on, areas where you could stand improvement, places where you might want to polish your skills in order to be a perfectly well-rounded 360-degree representative for your company? So that's one thing, right? Now take a look at your own core values and the goals that you've set for yourself in the business plan that you've drafted, or at least that you've thought about in your mind, that we've talked about again in previous episodes, the business plan of your career, 1 to 5 years out. How are you doing in respect of those? How are you doing in respect of the matrices and standards and core values that you set forth in that document? Are there skills that you need to acquire or improve in order to meet those goals, in order to satisfy those core values, right? Now take a look at organizations that you might aspire to work for one day, or the sorts of positions that you would like to hold moving forward. Take a look at the things that are required of folks to work at those organizations or in that particular industry or at that particular position, right? So if you ultimately want to be a CFO, but you've only got the accounting side of things nailed, and that you're doing great on. You get great performance evaluations year over year. You sit in the accounting department of a big company, but you ultimately want to aspire to be a CFO, right? Well, don't you need to look at the other side of the coin? They have to be great at the finance side of things, right? The idea of assessing a business, valuing your business, and then going out and getting financing for the business. That is a huge part of being a CFO. It's not just the number crunching on the accounting side. It's accounting and finance, right? It's about how do I make sure that I can reflect the value of this entity well enough so I can go out and get debt or equity financing for this company. Or similarly, so I can figure out which assets to sell or divest ourselves of in order to make the company lighter and more streamlined, more valuable, what have you. How do I assess when we are ready to go to market and be a public company? Those are things that you might never have worked on, or things that you might not have concentrated on or polished to the best extent. And so those are additional skills that you'll have to acquire or polish in order to ultimately hope to one day be a CFO. So that awareness is only going to come about through a really nice self-assessment, a really deep dive that you do on yourself. And that's why it's so incredibly important to do that sort of thing. And so again, this isn't meant to be an exercise that brings you down on yourself, because like I say, throughout the course of the year, you're going to be keeping track of both your mistakes as well as your successes. Only the successes go into your brag memo. This is for you behind the scenes to do an honest evaluation of yourself so you know what to improve and what to fix in order to advance to the next level. Unless you'd like to remain stagnant, in which case you don't have to do a self-assessment. And there it is. So hopefully this has been enlightening. Again, in future episodes, I'll drill down a little bit further into the sorts of categories that you might want to judge yourself by when you're doing this self-awareness exercise. I'd love to hear comments from you. If you'd like to drop them, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss future episodes. And I will see you next time from the Office of the CEO.